Hey everybody, I know that this channel is called Stadia Cast, but Stadia does not live in a vacuum. There are things that other companies, other services, other competitors that might do, that might happen, that will affect what Stadia is going to do. It will affect what we do with Stadia. And so we're definitely going to be talking about those kinds of things. And today something just happened that was definitely one of those kinds of things. Recently I made a video about, it wasn't really a comparison of Stadia to GeForce Now. It was just my first experience using GeForce Now. And as I said on Sunday's podcast, I thought the GeForce Now was pretty impressive. It was clunky, to be sure, but at the end of the day, I was able to play games in 1080p for free, mind you. Yeah, there's an hour limitation, but I could play them for free, and it worked really well. It worked, I would say, probably at least as, it worked as well as Stadia when you're not using a Chromecast and the Stadia controller. You know, when you're using the Chromecast and the Stadia controller together, I feel like Stadia is better than GeForce Now. However, GeForce Now has certain advantages that Stadia does not. One of those advantages seems to be vanishing, and I don't understand why. I don't understand why this has happened. What are you talking about, Bill? All right, let me get into it. So I'm looking at this article from The Verge, and it says NVIDIA's GeForce Now is losing all Activision Blizzard games. That's the headline. Let's tackle this real quick, because one of the great advantages that GeForce Now has over Stadia, and really I personally feel like they each have a place in the market without a doubt. But one of the advantages that GeForce Now has over Stadia is this idea that you have your library of games that you've already bought. You've already bought a bunch of games on Steam. You've already bought a bunch of games on the Epic Game Store or been given them for free, because that's what Epic Games is doing. You may have bought games on Origin or wherever it is that you've bought your games. It doesn't really matter. You can now stream them with GeForce Now. At least that's the promise of GeForce Now. And it looks like we've run into a hurdle that is going to make NVIDIA fall on their face. And I know, like I said, the name of the channel is Stadia Cast, but I'm not hoping for them to fall on their face. I think that competition in the cloud gaming space is a good thing. I am rooting for everybody to succeed, because the more places, the more competitors that succeed at cloud gaming, the better it has to be, because they will push each other to succeed. So for this to happen to GeForce is incredibly bad. Now, my initial reaction when hearing this is, well, how in the hell can Blizzard Activision do this? Like, basically they're saying that, yes, I own my games, and let me assuage you. I think that's the right word. Let me assuage you of any misconceptions that you may have. Right now, the games that you have on Steam, you do not own. Yes, you can download them. Yes, you can play them offline, but you do not own them, and the license can be revoked at any time. It hasn't happened, but it can. So all of those arguments where people are like, I don't want to do this because you can't own your games. These days, we really don't own our games anyway. And before somebody types into the comments about going to GameStop and buying a disc and bringing it home and putting it in your Xbox or your PS4, well, guess what? That disc is essentially a key with a license, which can be revoked at any time. And if they decide to no longer push out the updates, as almost every game ships now with day one huge patches, that's not going to work either. So we don't really own our games anymore anyway. The only games that we own are the ones that you can see sitting behind me on the shelf. Those plastic games, for the Nintendo Entertainment System or the N64, that kind of stuff. This copy of Columns up here sitting in my Sega Genesis. Like, those are games that I own. And the other games, the modern games that we play, you just don't own. So let's move past that argument. My initial thought was that Blizzard is saying these games that you own, you can only play them if you're playing on a computer that is in your house. That's essentially what they're saying. Activision Blizzard has reached out to NVIDIA and said, take all of our games, off of your platform. Now, it's really, really crazy that they would do this. For one, it's not like they're losing money by the platforms doing this. I mean, unless Blizzard Activision, and I always say it that way because Blizzard is the company that I care about and Activision is the one that I don't. Blizzard Activision, what if they're in a deal right now with Google for streaming and they want to sell copies of their games on Stadia? Then it does make sense, not necessarily ethically, but it makes sense logically that they might not want you to be able to play their games on GeForce Now. So we were having a conversation about this in our community Discord, which you can join over at runjumpstomp.com/Discord. And one of the things that somebody said was, well, NVIDIA is making a profit off of these games that Activision Blizzard they don't get to milk any of that profit. And my response to that is that NVIDIA they're not wrong. NVIDIA is making a profit off other people's games. However, NVIDIA is making a profit off other people's games in the same way that my ISP is making a profit off of these games. Let me use World of Warcraft, one of my favorite games of all time, as an example. You cannot play World of Warcraft without an internet connection. So is it okay for Blizzard to say, all right, well, if you're on Spectrum, you can use World of Warcraft, but if you're on Comcast, you can't, because we haven't made a deal with Comcast? And I don't think that that's fair. I don't think that that's right. And I don't think that Activision Blizzard should be able to reach out and say, hey, you can't play this game on a computer that is not in your house. Now, that's exactly what they've done, not only by taking these games away from GeForce Now, but it's specifically in their end user license agreement. And I think that doesn't make any sense to me, like financially, not just ethically, but financially as a whole. This makes absolutely zero sense, because it's not like Blizzard is selling less games because of this. If I want to play a copy of Overwatch on GeForce Now, I have to have access to that game. I need to have purchased that game at some point in order to access it on GeForce Now's servers. So I can see somebody saying, oh, well, Blizzard's losing money this way. They're not losing money. It's absolutely bananas that this kind of thing is happening. Now, NVIDIA has released a statement, and they've said they hope to work with Activision Blizzard in order to bring the games back. All right. They did confirm that right now it's pretty cut and dry. Don't expect them to show up anytime soon, or maybe even anytime later. NVIDIA also did not tell The Verge whether or not they would be open to giving a part of the subscription from their customers to the publishers of the games. And again, I don't think that makes any sense either. That is like my ISP having to take some of the money that I pay them, which is way too much. Thank you. But that's like my ISP having to pay some of my subscription fees to Disney Plus because I watched The Mandalorian this month. It doesn't make any sense. It's a terrible argument, and regardless of the reasons, this is really very bad for GeForce Now. And I think that it is there could be a chilling effect on the cloud industry as a whole. I don't see Google reacting to this because Google has their own way of doing it. This is not simply renting you a PC that you then have access to like Shadowplay does or like GeForce Now does. This is very different from Stadia, but it's going to disincentivize other platform holders from trying to get in on this because they know that somebody like Activision Blizzard could pull the rug out from under them at any moment. And I think this is terrible for companies like Shadow, like NVIDIA GeForce. And it's not, I don't think that this will have any effect on companies like Microsoft or Google or even Amazon down the road, unless Amazon is trying to do something along the lines of what GeForce Now is. Anyway, I am really, really curious what you all think about this particular development. I think it's insane. And I personally I'm offended that Activision Blizzard feels like they can tell me when I can play my games and when I can't. But guess what? That's what comes with not owning your games. Anyway, let me know in the comments section down below. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you're mad at Activision Blizzard, give it a thumbs up. If you haven't yet, hit subscribe and make sure that you come back in the future by clicking on that little bell so you get notified next time I post something. I'll see you all next time. Until then, bye-bye.